Hey, everybody, welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share stories of resilience and tools for resilience. This week, episode number 23, Memorial Day weekend episode, is called Bridging the Gap, and we're going to be meeting with Glen Williams on trauma, healing, and authentic connection. We're honored to have a truly courageous and inspiring guest in Glen Williams. He's a retired police officer and detective. Glenn's story is one of profound resilience and transformation. He was a police officer. He developed PTSD. He did have some detrimental behaviors, but was able to come back and recover and become a nationally recognized speaker and author of Bridging the Gap. Glenn's going to clue us in on some of his wisdom and how he made it out and how he inspires others to do the same. As you see, there's more people out there than you know dealing with the same things. And there's a lot of people out there overcoming those traumas and moving forward and turning it into a catalyst to help other people. So with further ado, here we go.
Of course. And Dennis is actually doing this mobile right now. He is attending a veterans golf initiative or league
It's a
where he's
league.
going
It's
to.
their PGA Hope program, and it's designed to get veterans out of the house and moving around again and interacting with each other. There's a lot of older guys. I mean, I'm an older guy too. I just turned 53, but I'm probably the youngest.
That's important. I know my son got blown up in Afghanistan
Oh,
and
shoot.
lived, but he was in Walter Reed for 4 years, 40 some odd surgeries, just so he could sort of get around at 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm glad he made it. Keep his head up. I mean, keep my number too if he ever wants to talk to another veteran that talks about this stuff on a regular basis.
I will,
More
because
than
he
happy
never
to
leaves the
assist if
house.
he does.
Yeah.
And part of it is going to be he's going to have to do it on his own terms.
Yep.
But he needs to know that there are things out there and that it's not as, the scary world that we kind of think it is sometimes. I got
Well,
fortunate where I almost got blown up and hit two cars in front of me, so I didn't have to go to the hospital for physical injuries, but I still wake up with the smell of burning flesh and things like that every once in a while when I have that 10 days of PTSD. So, although I don't know exactly when he went through, I'm really closely related to it. So, I'd love to reach out if he wants to, if he feels it.
Yeah, I actually was there during the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and he didn't have TV, and so I said, let's go find a place, and he has a VFW like 3-4 blocks from him.
Yes.
And we went over there and sat down, and we didn't watch the game there, but we checked it out before to see if it would be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And he really enjoyed it, but since he hasn't gone back. So
Yeah.
Did
you say that he's having a lot of issues even getting out of the house?
He doesn't go out of the house. I mean,
He does not go out of the house.
Yeah, he'll go to the store and do the stuff. And his wife, he just had their first baby.
Okay.
Right on.
I'm hoping that'll change things a little bit.
Yeah.
The little guys too. But that's kind of, I worry about that. It's kind of interesting because I actually had another officer that I didn't even know call me the other day. He finally retired after 18 years. He was on SWAT and everything, and he's really struggling. And somebody gave him my name, and I don't know why, because I'm not a therapist or counselor.
Yeah, but sometimes baby steps, just talking about things.
Yeah.
One of the big things that Cam and I have hit on several times in our episodes, we'll have thoughts going in our heads, and then actually voicing them out to somebody, even if it's just a buddy or even a stranger, just BSing with them in the elevator. Sometimes just that sounding board can reiterate the good things that you believed in and also the ridiculous things that you were thinking that, like, okay, let's reel this back in.
Yeah, that's my biggest message.
Good for you that you answered the phone.
Well, yeah, he sent me a text. I didn't recognize the number, and I don't answer if I don't recognize the number. But
you eventually talked to him?
Yeah, he left me a message, and I called him back, yeah. And it's interesting because he was embarrassed to be crying. I said, man, real men cry.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
You
can say that, but it's hard to feel it sometimes. Like, we can say it all day. I still struggle with it sometimes, even during a sappy movie. I'm like, boys don't cry. Don't, just shake it off. So you still have that social integration in our heads that just like keeps going around and around. You don't eat quiche, you can't cry, all that kind of crap,
Well, it's like Cam was saying, we don't talk about it. And we, back when if I admitted I wanted therapy or counseling because I needed help, I would have lost my job. They would have got rid of me, found me unfit for duty. And that's just, now it's changing, and I'm grateful for that. But it's got a long ways to go.
Yeah. My dad was actually, he was in the DEA. I kind of told you a little bit about it. But at one point, he was captured in Palestine and he was held for about a week where he had to witness someone be killed in front of him. He was tortured all the time. But eventually there was an exchange. And he knew when they asked him the question, "Are you okay?" If he were to answer in any other way than "Yes, I am," he would have lost his job.
Yeah.
So he dealt with it on his own, kind of, the Dirty Harry way. It never got to where I was, and I was a different case, but like he just kind of had to grit his teeth, get through it, do the work, code the calls, whatever they are, kind of like how we had to do it as police officers.
You put it in that box that you don't open until your 75th birthday.
And when I was a little kid, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd find my dad like in the living room or something like that, I'd ask him about it later, and he basically says, "At night my demons come to me." Now, I didn't understand what that was as a little kid, but now I get what he was saying. And when I got hurt and I was really struggling, he basically insisted, "You need to handle this now. This moment does not define you. This is just something that's happened. But we need to figure out what's going on, because based on his experience, handling on your own isn't easy. It's impossible because you're only dealing with what you know." So we're huge advocates of getting out there. I put my story out there so that other people know that there's other people making terrible decisions. Me, just making bad decisions, but natural decisions. Yeah, natural decisions based on the experience, based on the tools that we have, based on like what we've been told and what we've witnessed. We tried it our own way, and it didn't really get us out of the situation. I ran into Dennis actually at my dad's funeral not this March, but the March before. And it just so happened we were both sort of in the same place. We were both admitting that we had PTSD, and we were both saying that we were seeking help. And that just sprung so many branches off of it, because we're like, "Well, what are you doing to get better?" Faith was involved. And I was like, "Are you serious? We rode around a car for 4 years. We never talked about faith, ever." And now we're coming together as two grown men being like, "Hey, I didn't know what to do, but this seems to be working. Oh my gosh, that's working for me too." The other thing that we found, just that was so strange that works for us is physical activity like golf. It does matter. And one of the huge things initially, especially for me, I was hiding in my house in the basement. Going anywhere seemed like a mountain I did not want to climb. I didn't want to be seen by people. I thought they were judging me. I was thinking for them. Now that I look back at it, I was almost scared. I was scared. There's a lot of fear involved. And eventually I'd go play golf. I'd be terrible. But at least on the ride home, I knew that I had gotten out. And that's a small thing, but to me, it was a big deal. And I hope anyone hearing this, that when you're getting out there like Dennis is today, and you're getting in situations that are more social, it is a great thing. Anyways, I had to make that plug since he's out there doing it today. But,
and we also say golf is a lot like life. I mean, you have the hazards, the challenges. You have to play your game. You can't hit the same club the same distance as your buddy, probably. So you have to play it your way. You have to avoid the hazards your way. You have to improve on your game and your swing and your setup and your putting and your distances and your mental game and trying to get all the checklists going. While you're doing that on a small level, it can help you prepare for doing it in the real life too.
And it's so mental.
It could be bowling, it could be fishing, it could be anything that you're just putting your hands, you're putting some thought in. And I tell your son, the VA, they have a lot of, I can't remember what they call it, their program. It's their recreation program. It has an acronym like all military things too. And that's where you can do sailboating, you can do golf. That's how I found my golf. You can do art, you can do bowling, you can do pool, fly fishing, all of it.
I would recommend
they have a whole list.
I mean, he's had a little bit of a tough time because there's some background things that happened that they cut his disability and stuff over false statements, not his, but somebody else's false statements. And he finally got everything restored. It took him 10 years.
Wow.
So that's one of the problems with the government. The hurry up and wait. Like if they're wrong, you have to almost prove it before you get it
But yeah,
corrected, and it will take a long time. But if they think they're right, you're wrong, man, they'll correct it real quick, won't they?
yes, absolutely. No, and I love it. I actually just started golfing a lot lately, like the last 2 months.
So weird. Everyone's playing golf now, and it's the most stressful thing. So we've done like 2 episodes, and what it is, and I tell people all the time, is when you're stressed about golf on the course, it's really hard to stress about the things off
Yeah,
the course. So instead of it being like a Zen thing, it's actually a switch of focus, and
it's
then
such a mental thing, the whole game.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like constantly thinking. By the time you get done, you're exhausted. And
yeah,
that's another part of it. Like you were saying, physical activity. And the problem with PTSD is it never goes away. It's always lurking in the background. I had an experience. It's been 2 years now. And I travel and I talk to police departments, and because I just want to help others not do the same stupid shit I did.
gotcha. Let me do your
I
intro
ended up
really quick,
divorced.
really quick. Let me do your intro. So Glenn's
Great.
about to
I
bless.
want to hear more about
Glenn's Glenn is about to bless us with some golden nuggets here. So let me give you a quick background on him, okay? He is a retired police officer and detective. He is a author, and he's a nationally known speaker. He developed PTSD during his career. Is that a correct assumption? You didn't. Yeah, okay. So during his career, and he didn't deal with it, and he developed some detrimental behaviors common with PTSD. Glenn shut down. He stopped talking about it, and that ended up in a divorce. So 3 years alone following that at his cabin allowed Glenn to get back in touch with who he really is. He taught himself how to open up and communicate openly and honestly, which is such a hard thing for us to do as males. He now has a wonderful relationship with no secrets. This applies to personal as well as professional relationships. Glenn wrote the book, Bridging the Gap, and now travels and speaks about overcoming trauma. There it is, Bridging the Gap, self accountability, communication, and developing good relationships. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us today. And you were just about to talk about PTSD. Obviously, Dennis and I are trying to figure out our way through it all the time. You can go to a lot of doctors, you can go to a lot of people, but I'm always refreshed by talking to people who actually have it compared to the ones who've read the books. You know what I mean? Like the person who can actually say, yes, it sucks, but it's survivable, just like you. So you were just about to talk about how PTSD, one of the things about it is, and I have a lot of trouble accepting this because I think one day I'm going to wake up and it's going to be gone, is that it doesn't go away. And I'm having a tough time accepting that. But I do understand it, that it is an influence. My brain has literally kind of changed. And it's just kind of like the way it is. So, yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you were saying PTSD, it kind of hangs around for forever.
Yeah, it does. And there's so many things that in our just this last 5-minute conversation that hit me hard. Number one is self accountability. If you're not don't have self accountability, you're not going to get through it. And for example, I hear a lot of guys, and I let the job become my life. That's who I was. I'm a cop, and I
I thought
like
that's the
I
way
didn't
it
even
was.
cop. I am a cop.
I think a lot of us do that.
Yeah. And what I finally realized going through living at my cabin there by myself, I ended up divorced, bankrupt, lost everything, tried a second marriage, and that was a disaster. And I finally figured out that the only common factor in there was me. And I realized I reacted in anger a lot. In fact, something you said earlier, I had to laugh because I was, close to probably 50 foot chases and fights in my career. And I look back now and realize I talked myself into about half of those and I get it subconsciously. It was for the thrill, for yeah,
Yeah.
I got this. I'm going to prove it. And, when I was in my 50s, I was running 4 miles every other day, 8-minute pace, because I wasn't going to let some young buck beat me.
Right.
I'm competitive, that's for sure, and always have been.
Right.
But as I got through those things, and looking back now, I kind of laugh. So the message is open up and talk. And we were talking a little bit about how it never really goes away. I used to have 3-4 nightmares a week on stuff. And this things still bother me. Sometimes when I talk, I still start to cry. But I've decided it's better not to shut my emotions down because that's what started the whole problem.
Yeah.
was not talking about stuff. And so I just talk about it. I was at the Denver airport 2 years ago, and I was diagnosed probably 10 years ago, but I was displaying symptoms 15, 16 years ago.
Right. Right.
And I could blame everything on PTSD. Well, the job created my problems. No, the job didn't create my problems. I got PTSD. That didn't create my problems. It's still my decisions. It did affect my judgment and the decisions I made, but they were still my decisions. And so I have to take full accountability for those things. And that led to my divorce. And I did some of the stupid things that guys with PTSD. I had an affair, and I'm not proud of that. That'll never, ever happen again. But I was looking for that thrill.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that. It's
Yeah.
pleasure-seeking behaviors in order to supplement the way what's going on.
Yeah.
You get stuff up in your head. You need some endorphins. You need some good feels going.
Yeah.
And
so I made the decision for the divorce. That was my decision. And I could blame things on my wife at the time, but that wouldn't be fair to her. We both contributed to the problems.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the truth of most every breakup is there's a little contributing factors from both sides, but at least you're taking accountability for a big part of it, and that's huge.
Absolutely.
And I like that. That's a nail on the head kind of stuff that everybody needs to hear that out there. Take accountability for your actions.
So, well, I started working through things, and we'll get into that later. And then what's funny is I got down where I was only having 1 or 2 nightmares a year. And
lucky you.
Yeah, I was going, whoo, hallelujah. Then I was at the Denver airport, and I have a service dog. And I was at the Denver airport, and he was misbehaving, and things got packed weird, and I didn't have all my tools to work with him and to correct him. So the only thing I could do was submit him. I had to let him know I'm boss, quit messing around. And I've been to the Denver airport probably 10, 12 times. So I'm very familiar with that airport. I submitted him, and all of a sudden some gal came running up behind me, yelling and screaming at me for abusing my dog. And she was so loud and screaming, I spun around with an arm up, and I went into cop mode. And I get back.
Yeah.
And I yelled at her. And then pretty soon I got 20 or 30 people around me because she wouldn't stop yelling and screaming.
Yeah.
And she was so loud. My wife was in the restroom, heard her, and came out to see what was going on. And my wife is Miss Calm and cool. And she went over to get him and said, look, he's just submitting the dog. That's part of training. And then she comes up with a lie. Well, I train service animals, and that's not how you treat them. Yeah, right, whatever.
Right.
And just trying to build her credibility and things. And but all of a sudden, everything closed in. It turned dark gray. I couldn't see anything, and I just had this little vision. And I got up, and I don't even remember doing it, but I got up, took my dog heel, and went walking up the corridor, and I got lost. I've been there. I must have walked by the dog room. I was taking him to the dog room, and I probably walked by it 5 or 6, 7 times. I don't know. I wandered the airport, and I was lost for an hour.
Wow.
I mean, you weren't thinking about where you're walking. You're too busy. You weren't in that headspace time.
There was absolutely no thought.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like everything turned gray, dark, and went blank. And I
just
wandered. Yeah, I wandered.
Like tunnel vision, just like, and then closed out. Yeah.
Oh, and I'd never had that happen before. That was the first time for that. And I wandered around, and I finally kind of came out a little bit, and I realized I was standing right by the escalators that would take me down to the baggage claim area. And then it took me about 20 minutes to get the baggage claim, and it normally only takes about 7 or 8. I was still a little bit in a funk. And I got there. My wife was standing there by herself with our bag waiting. Everybody else was gone.
Right.
And she was not happy because she didn't understand it, and I couldn't explain it to her. So we got the car, and we drove an hour to my aunt and uncle's where I was staying that night, or we were staying. Finally, but then I had nightmares 4 nights in a row. 4 nights in a row. Yeah. And I kind of went, it was driving me nuts. In fact, one was so bad. I remember I hit the wall, and I scraped my knuckles and moved my knuckles. I'm just glad it wasn't my wife, because none of that's on purpose. But I was swinging in the fights and things like that. And so what we did then is the 4th day we actually had a ski trip planned with our kids. We have a daughter that lives out there, and So we went up to the ski, and I parked the car in the town, and I didn't touch that car for 3 days. I walked, I did everything, and then I got up on the mountain, and I was able to overlook the valleys and the two towns away, and it was just beautiful. And I worked hard physically,
Yeah.
and I was able to get that. And then the nightmares went away after for a while, not permanently, but I have to be. I've had a couple here and there, but it's been months now since I've had a nightmare.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's progress.
so it's progress. Now that all started. I did the same thing you did. I started. I was a good cop. I only had 2 drinks a night,
First
but
and
they
last,
were
right?
4 ounces each.
I was wondering where you were going with that. I was like, uh-oh.
Go to you. I only had 2
No,
drinks, my first and my last.
just great big ones. And when I was doing that up in my cabin, I mean, I drove 56 miles to get to work. But that was the only place I had after I got divorced. But I did that for, I don't know, a few months. And I finally kind of was sitting at the kitchen on the sink one day looking out the window, and I saw some deer coming by in the woods outside my cabin. And I kind of looked at the reflection in the glass thinking, man, what are you doing? The only life you're screwing up is yours, and nobody else gives a shit. And that was true. And so I started, I quit working out. My cabin was about 9 miles from the nearest town. And once I got up there, I didn't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I just kind of secluded myself away. And so what I finally started changing a couple things to get back to who I was. That's where I suddenly started realizing, yeah, I'm a cop. I work as a cop. That's not who I am, but that's who let myself become. Anybody ask, well, yeah, I'm a cop. Well, no, now I change that to, yes, I work as a cop.
That's good thinking. That's the one I've been struggling with for the last 2 years. I left the city department that I worked with Cam with the idea of going federal. Took the early retirement Missouri offers for police officers and firefighters and teachers, and then VA disability, and then federal for my next. But my last 2 years have been exactly that. What do I do now? Who am I? I've always been a cop. I've always been in the military as an MP, in the military too, as a cop. Military cop, civilian cop, civilian cop.
Yeah. It's an identity crisis.
It is.
Where do I
But
start?
you set yourself up for it first in a good way. You started preparing your mind for it before you left. That's I don't know if you planned it that way or what, but that's actually really smart.
No, I didn't plan it. It just kind of happened. And I had no intention of retiring at that time. Anything. I was still, working, and I'd get up at like 3:30 to get to work by 6, and then I'd get off work at 4 and get home about 7. So it was a lot of driving.
Right.
And that during that drive time, at the time, I'm grateful my mom was still alive. I talked with my mom like every day on the way home, and she's very religious, spiritual, and was a neat lady. And we talked about everything. And that's kind of where I started actually opening up. She's the only one I talked about everything with. And my first wife, I didn't share anything with her because I didn't want her to worry. We see stuff at work that the normal person doesn't want to even hear about, let alone see.
Or need to hear about in some cases. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of times I didn't tell family members as well, wives or mom or whatever. So I'm with you on that one too.
Yeah.
But now you're just swallowing those feelings.
Yeah. And when you swallow them, if you don't share them, they're going to eat you alive eventually. It was kind of funny because I was an officer for 18 years. And this one case sticks with me. It was a young kid that was lost. I got to work at 6 a.m, got a call immediately. I didn't even get to sit through roll call about a missing child. He was a 3-year-old boy. And they called him Little Houdini because he could escape from anything. His family actually put extra locks on the door to keep him in.
We had one like that too, by the rec center. He'd steal his mom's car and drive to get change at the gas station and the rec center and stuff. He was like 6 or 8. Anyway, go ahead.
So we got there, and the first thing you do, obviously, is search the house. It's a kid, and that's where 80% of the time they're found. And so we did that. And then where's his favorite park? Where's his friend's house? I went through and searched for 40 minutes. Well, when I pulled in, I saw something interesting. I pulled in, the teenagers had been out the night before. They dumped soap suds in the fountain at the apartment complex. And it had like 10 feet of bubbles up on top and overflowing out of the parking lot.
No.
Yeah, it was horrible. But we're standing.
No, I'm thinking he ended up in the water.
Yep. Yeah, we're standing there trying to figure out where else to look, and the wind came up just enough and parted the bubbles a little bit. We saw a shoe in the water and pulled him out and did CPR. And unfortunately, fire got there, fortunately, but we weren't able to save him. And I've taught CPR first aid for years. And if you're doing CPR, they're already dead. It's a miracle if you bring them back. And so mentally I prepared, but we looked at that and I'm going, man, did that 40 minutes of searching elsewhere make a difference?
Right.
I
You start
myself.
second guessing everything.
Yeah. Well, I had a good lieutenant that day, and he came over and put his arm around me. He says, "Are you okay, brother?" And that's the first time in 18 years that anybody ever asked me if I was okay. 18 years. And first time I was actually honest. I said, no, I'm not. And he told me, he says, go take care of yourself, then come back to the office when you're done and take care of your report and stuff. But go take care of yourself first. So I found a church parking lot backed up against the wall so nobody could just come in behind me, and sat there in my car and bawled my eyes out for about an hour. And that was the first time I'd ever shown emotion at work. And the first, other than anger.
Yeah. The things with kids always hurt the hardest. They always strike the hardest, too. Because they represent the most innocent of us.
Actually, yeah, absolutely. And the sad thing is, every officer that's been an officer for any time at all has an experience like this with a kid. I mean, everyone that have ever talked to, and that's the ones that strike them the worst, especially when you have your own kids at home. Mm-hmm. And so that one was kind of the start of actually opening up a little bit, because somebody actually expressed some concern. Yeah. And that lieutenant and I are still friends to this day. Out of all the law enforcement, I worked 26 years at 2 departments. I keep in touch with maybe 3 people.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Like you cross that line, you lose all your civilian friends and all that kind of stuff. You jump in that group, you think, you're broken down, built back up as one and all that kind of stuff. But eventually when you cross over that line to leave, like, I don't know, it becomes a barrier. It's really funny. You find out who actually has your back in those moments too. Like you were mentioning that you talk to your mom a lot. Yeah. And that's who I figured out. You figure out who's got your back, like I was saying. And if anyone, it's family. And that you can talk to them and they actually have your interest at heart, compared to giving you advice to sort of push you along. Like, a department wants you to get better, don't get me wrong, but they also don't want to be seen with you not doing better. So it's kind of like a tricky thing, but a family member's got your back, like ride or die. You're getting better. What can I do? And that's the way my wife was for me and my family was for me. And I'm so glad that you mentioned you reached out to your mom and said, let's talk. That's super cool.
Well, what's funny is we put our family, when we let the job become our life, we put our family on the back burner for the job. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we do it consciously. But many people see the job as a calling, and it really is. But
this is why you identify as a police officer when you're working it. It becomes personal to you.
But can't.
I always say you can't make you breaking the laws can't be personal to me because I didn't write the laws. So I'm just doing my job and enforcing the laws, right? But at the same time, I know my life is in danger in some of these situations, so it's hard not to take it a little personal as well.
Yeah.
So, that's why you start building up this, like, you are a police officer. It's a brotherhood, the blue line, all that stuff. But, I think Cam can probably echo this sentiment a little bit as well. When you, like he just said, actually, when you became a police officer, you lost all your civilian friends. And then when you stop being a police officer, you almost lose all your police officer friends.
Well, you do. And you're a
military is probably the only one that actually follows through with the brotherhood like you feel like it's supposed to. I mean, I still have military friends from basic training, from my first deployment in the 90s, from my last deployment 15 years ago. I've got And so I always expected that would be the same way with the Brothers in Blue. And it is to some extent. The first department I worked with in Dallas, I'm still friends with some of those people. I'm still friends with some people here in Missouri too. But it does change. It changes.
And it's
as much as you don't want it to or they don't want it to, it still does some.
Yeah. When you leave, like say you're easily replaced. And if I went back now, I think there's only 3 guys there that were there when I was there, and nobody didn't know who I was. Although I ran into one guy that I worked with the other day. I didn't recognize him. I hadn't seen him in 15 years, and I didn't recognize him at first. And he says, "Well, you're famous, at the department." I laughed and said, "Why?" And I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. I had a couple screw ups, so probably famous for one of those is what I figured. But
we all do. I mean, everybody has a screw up here or there. You got how you overcome it's important.
Exactly. Well, I taught scuba diving for many, many years, and I taught forensic diving. And actually, we did a multi-unit dive team for several departments that didn't have.
That'd be interesting.
And
yeah, that's super.
It was for that stuff that I did.
Oh wow!
Trained everybody, and so that was just a lot of fun for me, though. But that was my escape. Actually, they tell you have something outside of work for an escape, and that works for a while. Scuba diving was my escape because when you're underwater, man, everything is calm, peaceful. It's beautiful.
I took a couple basic classes, PTSD certification in Gitmo Bay, Cuba, actually. Even though I was an Army MP, we had all the Cuban migrants there that we were doing security for, and some Marine gunny sergeant or whatever was PTSD certified as an instructor, and me and a couple guys went and got our classes done. So I didn't go as far as you did with forensics and stuff, but you're right. Once you're down there in the water, it is amazing how, I don't know, it's amazing how far you can see, but it also feels with the water pressure. Right, because I sucked down a whole tank of air in my first couple of dives when I was only supposed to use like a quarter or a half because I felt claustrophobic.
So you're down there hyperventilating.
Get 10 or 12 dives under your belt, and that'll go away.
I apologize.
No, that's
I like
that's
it because
fine.
it's like you're.
Well, and that's what they told us stuff like in the academy. I'm trying to think back on this one now. They told us have all your outside friends and have outside activities and things like that. And then they said 4 hours with our spouse there. And at the end, they said, just make sure and keep your spouse involved. And then we walked out of there at the end of 4 hours going, and because they never told us how.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they never told us how. They just said, keep your relationship healthy. And, for a bunch of young bucks going in on this, what do we know about relationships? And it's like, I walked out.
No room to talk.
That's kind of where I came up with the program that I teach now, is I finally came up with the how.
Okay.
Awesome.
It took me 20 years.
Yeah, it took you 20 years. So you've been able to take what was happening, the PTSD, and then turn it into something very positive by sharing how it transformed you. Was there a moment you remember where you're like, you know what, no one's coming to save me, now's the time, you know what I mean? Or when you were like, you know what, there's power to this, I need to share it with other people. What was like that catalyst that you're like, you know what, I can share this with people and I will still serve?
I'm pretty social. And when I lived up in my cabin there, when I was telling you, I was standing at the sink looking out at the deer through the window and I saw my reflection. That's the moment of, I got to change. I got to change what
Gotcha.
I do. And so I cut back the drinking. Now I still have a glass of wine with dinner and stuff now and then, but I don't drink every day like I was then, and drink a lot every day. But it's what I did then because I didn't have nightmares when I was intoxicated.
Right. Well, it's self-medicating. We were silencing that voice. I always said my PTSD because they had things as a cop and things in the military. And plus you have normal everyday stuff that you think about and worry about with work and relationships and friends and family and yourself and your health and all the things. It was like a TV channel going through in my mind.
Yeah.
2 seconds on this topic, 2 seconds on this topic, 2 seconds on PTSD, 2 seconds on my failing marriage, 2 seconds on what I did wrong, 2 seconds on something this. And it's just like never changing. But drinking silenced that. And so I could go to sleep and not think like that.
Yeah.
But I'm with you now. I'm trying to cut it down because I woke up one day realizing that I was doing like almost a handle a night at sometimes. Not every night, but like one night of handle of crowns, like this much left at the bottom. Like that's too much for one night for one person on a Wednesday afternoon by yourself with nobody around. Hello, wake up. So I didn't see my reflection in the deer. That sounds like that must have been a lot more serene environment to watch it in. I'm still in the very, very beginning phases of trying to slow it down a lot, which I have. And then if I can't, or if it comes back or keeps rearing its ugly head, that's when I'm going to decide I can't do it on my own. I'm going to have to go the AA route. But talking with Cam every week, talking with new guests every week, hearing new inputs and new ideas, it constantly fuels my desire and my willingness to keep striving to be better. So thank you for being here today for that, for sure, too.
Yeah, no worries. And you know what's interesting? Like once I got up the cabin, I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to be around people or anything. And I'm actually a pretty social person. So what I changed was I started throwing my gym gear in my car, and I'd stop at the gym on the way home. So I get home an hour later, but now I'm tired from working out. And then I quit. I put the alcohol away, and instead of eating the crap meals, and I was eating like garbage. It was like bad, you know.
Did you quit drinking cold turkey, or did you do any program or anything like that, or did you wean yourself?
It took me a while, and I did it on my own. I don't think I was to the point where I had to have it, but I wanted it because of the getting rid of the nightmares. And I probably did that for about almost a year. And then when I looked at myself in the mirror and went, "What the hell are you doing?" That's when I went, "Okay, I got to change this," and I did. And I went out. I actually, it's kind of funny. I'd stop at the gym, and it was pretty snowy. My cabin was at 8,000 feet, so I got 10 feet of snow up there.
Ooh.
So I'd go out and shovel snow and work my tail off, and that helped.
Get that workout in. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then I actually bought snowshoes so I could go through the trees and stuff in the winter. And that was a funny one because I put them on,
I'll be right there.
Stepped off my deck, and I went and I'm huffing and puffing and sweating. And I looked back, and I'd probably gone 20 yards. Oh, no, I got to do better than this. So I unpacked it that day. The next day I went out, and I finally ended up with a route that was about 2 miles long that I could go out through the forest and the trees, and figured that out.
You sound like Rocky when he fought the Russian.
Yeah, secret on snowshoeing. Don't get in close to the trunk of the tree because that snow's soft. I went down over my head. and I was scared, I'll be honest, because I wasn't sure I was going to get out of that, but I managed. I kind of half crawled up the tree trunk, and
because that can mess up with your equilibrium, and you make you feel like you're going the right way when really you're going the wrong way.
Yeah, and that one scared me a little bit, so I learned don't get right next to the tree trunks where the snow is still soft.
I didn't know that. I had no idea. Now we know. Anyone out there, don't go next to the tree trunks. You will get swallowed.
And then what's funny is in the spring, I watched where my path went. I actually went over top of a pond I didn't even know was there. But it was iced over and covered in snow. And I got over 2 barbed wire fences that I didn't know were there.
That's some deep snow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of snow.
Yeah, 6 to 8 feet.
A lot of snow.
But anyway, the workout, though, the exercise started helping me a lot. And I've been an athlete all my life. My father was a coach, and so, of course, I did everything. And that helped me get back into physical shape and eating better. And then I actually started sleeping a little better because I was exhausted. You go work 10 hours, have 4 hours of drive time, and then go do a hard hour workout.
Right.
It was a lot, but I still had the nightmares coming, and it took me a while to get over that. But what really helped me...
Anything that triggers it besides the yelling match at the airport, or any other daily things that trigger it, or is there certain TV shows or sounds, smells? If
I drive by that apartment complex where the kid was, my heart starts going, and I get all, my breathing kind of is best. So I live in a different town now, so that's nice on that part.
Yeah.
But it is kind of where I go sometimes. And I did martial arts for many years. I almost 30 years. And I finally stopped 2 or 3 months ago because the young bucks, I'm not as strong, limber, or fast as I used to be.
It sucks getting old, doesn't it?
I'm starting to get hurt. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
So that's why I took up golf.
Okay, cool.
Off and on for years, but never enough to be anything but really bad. And
All you need, a bad day at golf is better than a good day at work. Okay, this is
absolutely. And
my
I
goal
enjoy
on the course every time I go out. I just need
Yeah.
one good drive, one good long iron, one good short iron, and one good putt. That's 4 strokes. I got 18 holes to do it in.
Yeah. And that's all it takes to bring you back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
You know
I
what?
do that, and I fly fish, and I love fly fishing, although I'm not very good at it. But just being out with the stream and the quiet,
Yeah.
and and getting out in the wilderness and in the that's really healing for me.
Yeah.
Nature can kind of heal you. I feel that in golf too. I feel that on the motorcycle too. I feel that walking on, daily walks with the wife after she gets off work or things like that. Nature's great.
You think it's because, like, eventually in nature, and I know it takes a minute for me, like half an hour into a walk or something like that, all of a sudden, like, it feels like the plug that's attached to the world comes out. And I'm finally in the moment. And just that, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm here. Compared to running over things from yesterday and all the things you could have done in the past or the anxiety of what's coming in the future. It's like, at least I'm right here. You know what I mean? That could be like a walk through the woods and like the leaves are falling. It could be like being in a shower even. It's just moments when you're like, you're like, I'm right here. Like I'm present. You get a second and then you're like, okay, things aren't that bad.
That's one of
like literally grounds you.
Well, that's one of my goals is be in the moment. And that's kind of my mantra, because some studies show that actually people only spend about 5% of their time in the actual moment.
Mm.
They spend time thinking about what they should have done different in the past, which is a waste of time because you can't change it. And what's going to happen in the future, which is a waste of time because that depends on what you do right here, right now.
Yeah.
That determines the future.
You focus on now. That's right. We've hit that topic a few times in different ways as well. I think one of my favorite ones was, what was it? Don't bother thinking about the past, what you did wrong, what you could have done differently. It doesn't matter. It can't have happened anyway differently because it didn't happen anyway different.
Yeah.
So just stop wasting the time and energy on it.
Exactly.
Now, have a plan for tomorrow for some things that could come up, but don't excessively dwell on those either, because I mean, like, I've had this problem with a couple other people, friends and stuff too, that talk about their problems, always thinking about tomorrow, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And it's like, but nothing could happen tomorrow too, right? Yeah. So how much time are we wasting right now thinking about tomorrow when what you're worried about might not even happen?
Yeah.
You have a plan now, put the plan in place. The plan's there for a reaction if something happens close to what you think could happen, but plan on nothing happening. And be prepared for that first.
So, those are the things, is be present right here, right now. And
control what you
and keep in shape. Golf is great, especially. I mean, you can golf till you're 90.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll be able to
it's like the only sport. It's the only sport you can play till you're old.
Yeah. You just don't keep score anymore.
Exactly. And we've talked about golf. We did a whole episode on golf, like how to play golf if you're just trying to get into it. Like my wife and I scramble. You know what I mean? So we both hit. We pick the best of the two shots. It doesn't really matter, you know what I mean? But it just kind of speeds up the game a little bit. She's gotten more into it, all this kind of stuff, and she's
quality
developing
time hanging out with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Building that relationship, that's what I love now. Is I got another chance, and if it would have been the old me, she would have gone out with me 2 or 3 times. Said, he's a nice guy, and that would have been it. But because I opened up and I changed me, we have a wonderful relationship, and I have zero secrets from her about anything.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
What a feeling, right? When you actually tell someone who you actually are, and then they receive you. And you're like, wait, hold on. And they actually want the best for you. And you're like, whoa, I don't have to act like this person to get this. I can just be me. Thank you for saying that, Glenn. That's huge.
It is. And if I had that in my first marriage, I'd probably still be married to her. Well, except she passed away. So not now, but it's those are the things.
But that honesty would have kept you guys closer together, even going through problems.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I would ever tell my mom or my wife every detail about different things that happened on a job or on a call or when I was overseas or anything like that. But I would give them little details, just enough to scratch the surface and this is why I don't really want to talk about it too much, or this is why it bothers me. This is why the smell of smoked meat barbecuing in my backyard will sometimes trigger my PTSD nightmares.
Yeah.
So I don't smoke as much. So, but she didn't ask me that anymore. It's like, you feel like it? And I'll think about it for a second. I'll go, yeah, it's been a while. And I also switched to like applewood and cherry wood instead of mesquites and hickories, because those stronger woods were hit worse, or I guess, or affected me more.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what I teach now is you don't tell the unvarnished what happened.
Right, but you give them something. That way you can stay on the same path.
Exactly.
Go in the same direction.
Yeah. Rephrase it and leave out the gore.
Yeah. But let them see that something hurt you. Let them see that you were vulnerable. Let them see that something bothered you. Tell them,
Okay,
you
yeah,
can say
let 'em know.
it was about a kid. It was about a kid. You don't want to know anything more, and it's just going to bother me for a second. So just give me like 30 minutes by myself for a second, and I'll come up to talk about dinner and stuff then. And they're great with
let
it.
them know. When I was going through that door, I was scared because I thought I was going to get shot, but it worked out. And as you can see, I didn't, and things, and but you leave out the gory crap that but you can still share the story as a whole. And
because it's so important in any relationship, no matter what your job is, to be a very honest form of yourself to your partner, and honest about your feelings to your partner, and that way you guys can be honest with your wrongdoings. Be accountable. The accountability part that you talked about at the beginning of this session or talking.
And that's what I was just going to say. To be honest with your partner, you have to be honest with yourself, and that's where it all starts.
And that's hard for big tough type A personality, military police officer types.
I'm a guy. I got this. I don't need help. Yeah, whatever.
So when you go into a department,
I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, so when you go into a department or you go in to do your presentation, what is your main goal? What is it you want to basically hand off to the individuals you're talking to? I know that's kind of a big concept, but I'm always, whenever I go into like a public speaking event, I've got a couple key things I want to put in there.
Give us a sales pitch.
What's your pitch?
It depends on which one I'm doing. I have an 8-hour training course. And then if I'm doing a keynote, that's a little bit different, chopped down. I start off with self-accountability.
Okay.
In order to get through life, you've got to be self-accountable successfully. And the same thing, then I get into relationships. Mm-hmm. Because life is about relationships, and communication is the key.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where I go to start with, and then we develop. And I'll be honest, if I do the 8-hour course, they never turn out exactly the same.
Right.
It depends
on the audience a little bit, probably.
Yeah, it depends on the group. And but those are probably the three most. And number one, it's okay to have problems. It's not okay to squander the opportunity to get out of them.
Oh, good one.
And solve
I like that.
Say that again. Everybody at home hear this one. This one's a good one. Say it again. It's
okay to have problems. It's not okay to waste your time in them and not get out of them.
Waste your opportunity to get out of it.
Yeah.
And it definitely speaks to self-accountability, because again, for a long time, I thought maybe someone was coming to save me. I think I had this like hope that this wasn't my fault, so someone else is going to fix it. But nothing changed until I started doing the work that I didn't want to do. I really didn't want to do it, but I had to start, put one foot in front of the other. My goals had to be small. How do you recommend that people get, if they're really never really been able to hold themselves accountable? Is there any way you teach them to do that? Or is it like a step-by-step or goal process? How do you implement that?
I actually talk about writing things down.
Okay.
Because if you write things down, you don't have to share it with anybody.
Mm.
But it lets
you get it out of your head.
Which is important to do. Let your mind know it's okay to get it out. And that's a first step. Therapists call that journaling. And that's actually how my book came about.
All right.
Because I started writing things down to work through them myself. And my book is about things that created PTSD for me and what I didn't do back then and what I do differently now.
Gotcha. Wow.
And so that's kind of where I went through it. And actually, I shared that with my wife, every bit of it. I'd read it to her every day when I wrote. I'd read it to her, and she'd go, "Wow!" Some of those things I'd never told anybody. And
It felt
well,
good to
that
get it
was
out. It felt good sharing
yeah,
it and seeing positive affirmation back from your partner. Isn't
absolutely.
that
And she was open.
give you the hope and the fortitude to keep going, that this is working and that you're making progress?
Yeah,
The little rocks that you're
absolutely.
moving are working. You make bigger rocks going to start being moved. So
Yeah.
I got all the parables.
No, and what's funny is I actually got into some kind of weird, not weird, but outside the box things that actually helped me. Like if I say drum circle, to me as a cop, that meant a bunch of hippies around a drum smoking weed and having a party.
Yeah.
But
And now that we're not cops, we can go to it, right?
well, what I found
In
were
Missouri, you
shaman,
can. It's legal in Missouri now.
okay, and Colorado, and yeah, a lot of places. But what I found were shaman-led drum circles for healing.
Okay.
Okay.
And I started going to some things like that, which is way outside my box. And that was one of the things I started doing, was stretching my box.
Yeah.
Because I was so this way.
Yeah.
And I started going out to there. There's what was the other one that I started doing? I can't even remember what. I'm going blank here for a moment.
I've dabbled
I
with
know what
yoga
you
a little
mean.
bit. So that's kind of the same kind of thing. I've wanted to get back into journaling a little bit because I used to be a creative writer and write poetry and things like that at the high school range, a long time ago.
Well,
Art, I used to be really big in art.
Yeah, I actually just wrote it. I found out I actually am a pretty good writer and I enjoy it. So I actually just wrote a fiction, first of a 5-book series or so.
Very cool.
I just got it back from my editor. So of course it's about a cop.
Yeah. I thought
But-
about that before too, though, like to make like a story of. I know I have lots of, like just take some real life influences and just forward them and make it completely fantasy. Make it, I don't know, it could be murder thrillers type of thing, like the cop gets away with it because he knows how to, or it can be, I don't know, good cop, bad cop in the department going back and forth against each other. It could be, I don't know, it could be the cop that always, lethal weapon, always gets the job done but doesn't look right,
There you go.
so he's always bucking the system a little bit. I feel that one's been done a lot, but I don't know.
Well, you'll
I hope you didn't do that. I just talked it down.
Yep. Mine's about a kid that's half Native American. His mom's Native. His dad is a Navy SEAL Medal of Honor winner.
Okay.
He loses touch with his culture, even though he was raised by his grandfather pretty much because his dad was gone all the time. So he becomes a cop to be of service, and as a rookie, he stumbles into this underground group that's kidnapping and killing Native Americans, which is a real problem.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, and so he ends up going undercover on his grandfather's reservation. His grandfather's the chief, to solve the crime.
Okay. Do you have a little personal touch to this? You got a little American Indian in your blood?
I do not.
No? Okay. You have a little bit. I mean, it's dark in here, the cameras, who knows? I thought maybe you had a little bit of the facial features of American Indian characteristics, and maybe that was the driving factor for your motivation to it, but it's still an interesting topic. I'll read it.
Yeah, no, it turned out pretty good. It did not end the way I thought it was going to end, the way I originally planned, because the characters took life and it shifted things. But I have had 2 Native Americans read it, my rough draft, and they both loved it because I have go into some of the rituals there because he gets back in touch with his culture a little bit, and I wanted to make sure that number one, it's not white man's lies. I do not want to disrespect their culture, because it's an amazing culture. It really is. How I got interested in Native Americans was when I was a kid. My grandfather was a photojournalist, and the first books to read in his library were about Native Americans.
All right.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so that was like when I was 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
my mom's dad, my grandpa on my mom's side is Iroquois Indian. And he used to always make little cowboy and Indian figurines out of lead that we could play with as kids and paint. And then he also we'd go arrowhead hunting all the time. So I understand a little bit of what you're saying about understanding some of the culture, but not knowing enough about it. In fact, my 23andMe showed I didn't have any American Indian blood in me, which I thought was kind of odd since my grandpa on my mom's side, but that's how it works. I get more paternal DNA, I guess, than maternal DNA.
No, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just the way things bounce around, I guess, is what they said.
Yeah.
That or I don't know. My mom lied to me all the time. I doubt that though.
Well, you know your grandfather, so.
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but yeah, anyway,
When's
so
that going
that's
to be out?
probably next year. Like I say, I just got the back from my editor on the first major edit, and I've got about 6 or 7 or 8 more to go. But we had to get it cut. So anyway, yeah, it'll probably be next year. I think I'm going to have it called Quest for a Vision or Quest for a Vision, probably something like that.
Okay. That's interesting. I may have to call you offline on all this because I'm interested in doing that kind of stuff. And you've actually written the book about how PTSD affected you, how it transitioned into something positive, in your life and how you wanted to share it. So I'm definitely going to get on the phone with you. But really quick, we've got about 10 minutes left. We try to keep it about an hour. Our podcast is about stories of resilience and tools for resilience. And I was just curious if you could tell us, what does resilience mean to you now? After everything you've experienced and after you've shared, what does resilience mean to you now?
Resilience to me is not staying in that one place where you're pounded down, but working through the issue and having an extraordinary life. And that is everybody is capable of having an extraordinary life. I look now where I was then and where I am now, and I can't even compare.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be a billionaire or anything like that, but I have a dang good life, and I have a lot of people. I've expanded my scope of friends. I hang out with like-minded people, and that's part of it, is hang out with people that you want to be around and that are good for you, and not that are going to hold you back. Because there's a thing that came out a few years ago that said, and they talked about finances, but your finances are about the same as the main 5 people you hang out with.
Okay.
And it's the same thing with attitude. And what I'm thinking, that's just not money. So yeah, don't just go out and hang out with rich people so you can pretend to be rich. But the same thing with attitude. I hang out with positive people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not positive and you're dragging me down, I cut you loose.
Yeah. Positive breeds more positivity. Negativity breeds more negativity.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to break the cycle. Also, when you change your life, this is something I heard earlier this week. I read, and it really struck to me, accord with me, and I think it might with you guys as well. When you go to make a really big, important change in your life and really change who you are fundamentally, like we have, we're no longer police officers and we don't identify as police officers. We have PTSD. We have some struggles with that. We're making big, huge changes. And the only way to do that is you have to kill off the old person. You have to, the old person has to die. The old making mistakes has to die. Some of the friends that you were with that were bad influences, those relationships have to either die or drastically be cut back, because if they're not feeding you positively with what you're going through, you're going to falter and fail. Yeah. So it's really important.
And you don't really get to be yourself around people who are always kind of cutting you off, striking you down, being like, that's stupid, blah, 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 blah. When you could literally have the same conversation with someone who loves you, who cares about what's going to happen to you, who's positive minded, and they see ceilings that you've placed on yourself. And they're like, why do you think you can't do that? Like, Glenn, why do you think why did it take you forever to write a book? And I bet there's somewhere in there, be like, well, I didn't think I was capable of doing it until you took that ceiling off and you were like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And you did it. And the world didn't break. You got to grow. And, it's just an amazing thing when we take our guardrails and even the ceiling off. We're not like fleas. If you put a lid over fleas, they'll only jump that high even without it. We can take the lid off and jump higher. Yeah.
Our internal fears hold us back. And that happened when I was writing my book. I actually finished my book in October. Had a pitch to a publisher. They wanted it. I had to do the submission paperwork. I had it all done except the last page, and the last page was endorsements. And they wanted 3 endorsements. I had 2. And my internal mind was going, 2, and neither one of them is good enough. This isn't good enough. And I held on to it for 6 months. 6 months. And then I woke up one morning and I learned a trick. It takes your mind 5 seconds to come up with an objection why something won't work. And our mind, that's what our mind's designed to do. It's designed to protect us from failure, protect us from hurt, pain. And so I got up and I said, I'm going to finish this today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And I went downstairs, got on my laptop. 30 minutes later, I had it done and I submitted it as was. I didn't make any changes. The next day, I got a call from the publisher and he says, I'd like to talk to you in person. This was on a Friday. He says, we're closed till Monday. Can I talk to you sometime next week? Well, I worked Monday, Tuesday, so I talked to him on Wednesday. And he says they meet on Thursdays to accept or reject book pitches. And then he went through what happens. He says, I'll send you a sample contract. That way you're familiar if they do accept your book, blah, 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 blah. And then on Friday, I was working out in the garage, didn't have my phone with me, but he called me on Friday and he left me a message. He says, congratulations, I'm going to send you a real contract, not a sample contract.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought I was good enough deep inside. That's what my mind was telling me. I really know. And that's one of my messages. Come from the heart, because the heart never is wrong.
Right.
It always knows. But the mind will tell you, okay.
Yeah. Have a good time out there.
Thank you, Dennis. Enjoy the game, brother.
Yeah.
You too.
There we go. All right. So let me see. Yeah, I apologize about that. We didn't, last second he got an opportunity to do that.
Absolutely.
It's a good way to get it out there. But it's been such a pleasure talking with you. I'm going to attach all your info, including your LinkedIn page, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'll attach that to this episode. Any last words that you want to get in for anyone listening, whether they're an active police officer, veteran, or just a regular folks who are dealing with issues just the same? Any last words of inspiration?
Yes. Physically stay in shape, eat well, get some sleep, and don't let your mind tell you can't do it. And then the most important thing is be open, honest, and talk. And if you've got issues that are going on, find someone to talk to.
Yeah,
and get it out there and work through it.
And I really loved how you're telling people to live authentically, to live true. And what I've found is when you live that way, you attract people with that same kind of mind compared to acting like you're the crowd and sort of blending in and just repeating what other people are saying. You think those are friendships at first, but they're not, because they don't know you and you don't really know them. And you find yourself in a situation like you said, you grew up in athletics. So did I. I played hockey, swimming, lacrosse in college. I played D3 lacrosse, at Virginia Wesleyan. And man, I really forgot where I was going with that. But it ends up, what was I saying?
Who you were, who you are.
The competitiveness. Yeah, the competitiveness, and how, like, when you've been raised in locker rooms, you've been raised on teams, you're really good at just kind of like keeping to yourself and just kind of saying the things that everyone else around you is saying, or at least that's how I sort of like blended in, And it turns out none of those people really knew who you are, and you don't really know who they are or anything like that. And you get competitive, and it's the same sort of situation I found within law enforcement. You're joining a team, so you're not going to talk about your flaws. You're not going to talk about whatever, because they're immediately going to get struck down with you're silly, you're stupid in so many words, you know what I mean? And and once you see someone go through that, or you go through it, you're like, never mind. I'm just here to be this guy, and I won't let them know who I really am. And somehow that transitions into life. And it's just an amazing thing when, like you'd said, you took that ceiling off yourself, and instead of like, how could this be me? You're like, why couldn't it be me? And then you just hit a button, and the world didn't shatter when you did it. And it just put it out in the world, and you were vulnerable in that moment, whether yes, no, blah, 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 but you did it. Like, I talk a lot about, we hear so many criticisms in our life from people who are observing. We're literally the star of the show on the gladiator floor, and we're listening to what the people in the stands who aren't even in the situation we're in, they're telling us, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Listen, I'm doing my best in the middle of this, and actually, you're not helping me. And I'm not going to give you that anymore, because I'm taking accountability for what's happening in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just such a beautiful thing. And so many people so many more people are saying it now. Everyone out there, I encourage you, obviously, chase down Glenn, figure out what he's doing. If you can get to one of the events, that would be huge. Reach out to him with any questions. Get ready for the next book that's coming out. Check out the one that's out there right now, Bridging the Gap. And besides that, Glenn, you are a Shit Creek survivor. Thank you for sharing your story of resilience and your tools for resilience. All right. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
and
that.
I'm just going to say goodbye.
Hey guys, thanks again for joining us. It was a super exciting episode. Thank you to Glenn for sharing all that wisdom with us. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. We got more guests coming, more exciting stuff. So if you're getting anything from the episode or think anybody else could, please like, subscribe, and share. And if you're feeling extra generous, leave us a review. Thank you so much.